Before we begin the Business Management Committee meeting, I've just learned that Rosalind Carter has gone into hospice care. And so I guess I'd like to ask us all to just keep the Carter family in your thoughts and your prayers at this time. I had the privilege of being able to visit with Mrs. Carter in her home down in Plains many years ago, and it's an experience I will always remember. So let's go ahead and call the Business Management Committee meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the October 26th Business Management Committee meeting. I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve. Okay, it is before us now. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Then let's go ahead and vote. The motion passes. Minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing renewal of the authority's excess operating property and liability insurance coverage for calendar year 2024. Donna Jennings, welcome to the lectern.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Greenwood, members of the committee. I'm here today to obtain approval to renew the authority's excess operating property and liability insurance programs for calendar year 2024. In my presentation, I will provide you with an overview of the insurance market conditions, the structure of the programs, and the cost of the policies. At the conclusion of my presentation, I will ask for approval of my recommendations. Sorry, go ahead and skip to the next slide. There you go. Thank you. So first, let's discuss the challenges in the excess liability insurance markets. Presently, there are only a few insurance companies that are willing to participate in lead layers that are closest to the loss, to where the losses occur. This is the main reason that our self-insured retention increased to $10 million in 2019 and remains at that level today. The primary factor driving the increasing cost of liability insurance is the dramatic increase in the cost of automobile and excess liability claims over the last 10 years, which continues unabated. Rising jury verdicts propelled by social inflation are making it very difficult for insurance carriers to accurately predict the severity of losses and underwrite accordingly. The consequences of this for insureds is that rates for coverage continue to rise as carriers attempt to generate enough premiums to cover expected losses. As I mentioned previously, insurance carriers are now participating at higher levels in the programs, which insulates them from risk. Carriers have also reduced the capacity or the limits that they are willing to deploy on each client's behalf, which increases frictional costs because we must use more insurers to provide the same amount of coverage. For example, in 2018, 11 insurance companies provided our $150 million in coverage. Today, we have 21 insurance companies on our program providing the same amount of coverage because each insurer takes on a much smaller percentage of the total limits. And finally, rising reinsurance costs, which are the insurers of the insurance companies, continues to drive premium increases to the point that some insureds are being forced to purchase less coverage. Next slide, please. So moving on to the structure of the liability program, the structure is outlined here and remains the same going into 2024. Our self-insured retention is $10 million, and the total limits of coverage are $150 million. Next slide, please. Moving on to the cost of the coverage for next year, the estimated not-to-exceed cost for the 2024 liability coverage is $9.56 million, a potential increase of 18%. As Marsh continues negotiations with the insurance markets, our goal is to drive down the cost as much as possible. At present, if we paid the projected not-to-exceed amount, the cost for the coverage would increase by $1.45 million. Please note that the not-to-exceed amounts are very conservative estimates, and it is my expectation that the final costs will be lower. Next slide, please. Now we're going to talk about our property coverage. We continue to face challenges in the property insurance markets as well. High inflation continues raising replacement cost values at a pace more rapid than premium growth. Leading construction cost indices saw upswings for U.S. property on average of 7%, even after significant increases were applied in 2022. Insured losses as of October 1 were the fourth highest on record, with $24 billion events, including wildfires, inland flooding, and severe convective storms. The combination of natural catastrophe events and high inflation have created a perfect storm in the property markets and continue to exert upward pressure on pricing, as the average increase in the second quarter of 2023 for large property programs was plus 24%. Next slide, please. Now let's review the structure of our property program. The program's outlined here and remains the same going into 2024. Our self-insured retention is $5 million, and the total limits of coverage are $350 million. Next slide, please. The estimated not-to-exceed cost for the 2024 property coverage is $2.95 million, a potential increase of 32.7%. As Marsh continues negotiations with the insurance markets, our goal is to drive down the cost as much as possible. And at present, if we paid the projected not-to-exceed amount, the cost for the coverage would increase by $727,000. And again, please note that the not-to-exceed amounts are very conservative estimates, and it is my expectation that the final cost will be lower. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the total not-to-exceed cost for the excess operating liability and property insurance program for 2024 is $12.513 million. And I respectfully request the committee's approval of this resolution. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Entertain a motion and a second to move this forward. Properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions of Donna? Bill?
Yeah, just a few simple understanding kind of questions.
Yes, sir.
How do we budget for liability losses?
For liability losses?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a $5 million self-insured program. Do we budget in our budget for that?
Yes.
Or do we budget for a normal amount we normally spend on that? How do we do that?
We budget for our losses through an actuarial study that we have done every year to analyze our funding needs for our losses.
Well,
And then
on property insurance, it may not be $5 million, it may be.
Property, I mean, we do an analysis for the actuaries do an analysis of what our losses are. And for property insurance, we haven't had any losses that penetrate that retention in 15 or 20 years. So on the liability side, we do the same thing.
Okay, explain that again to me. You say we budget, but we haven't had anything go over $5 million. Is that what you're telling me?
On the property side.
On the
Now,
property side,
on the liability side, we have had a few losses that have penetrated when we had the $5 million retention. Now we have a $10 million retention since 2019, and we've had no losses that have penetrated that. So we essentially fund all of our losses out of our operating revenue.
Okay, with these different insurance companies, is that a lump sum for multiple claims, or is that per claim?
This is just for premium cost. This is not losses. This is just to pay for our insurance premiums.
Okay, but our self-insurance, $5 million, is that for any number of claims, or is it just per claim?
It's per
Does that make
occurrence.
sense? If
It's
you have
per
one
occurrence.
claim that
Yes,
has
sir.
$5 million.
It's per occurrence, yes, sir. So we have one claim.
Another claim the next
Yes,
week
sir.
for another $5 million.
Yes, sir. It is a per occurrence
So it's
limit.
not a joint.
No, sir.
So the loss could be $50 million a year, self-insured, not just $5 million. Am I thinking about that right? You had 10 claims that reach that limit.
Once it penetrates $5 million, the insurance companies kick in. So, but yes, we have multiple losses that fall under that self-insured retention.
So, Mr. Floyd, if I could, maybe I can help. But yes, the answer is if we had, 10 claims that all came in under the self-insured policy limit, then we would, if all of them were $4 million, we would pay $4 million out for all 10 of those. If one claim was for, say, $12 million, and it was determined that $12 million was the payout, we would pay the 5, insurance covers the rest. But then the next week, if we have the exact same, not the exact same claim, but a similar claim for $12 million, again, would be on the hook for the first part of the retention, whether it's 5 or $10 million.
Okay, so the liability's substantial here.
Yeah, and so every time we get a claim in or a potential claim in, we do an analysis and we reserve, set aside the amount of money we think the claim is worth on the budget sheet, so we have an idea throughout the year what Kevin and Greg need to have in case things go worst case scenario. That's how we budget for it.
That's correct.
And these are multiple insurance companies to get to this level we're using. Is that what I'm understanding?
I guess I'm not sure what your question is right now.
Well, I mean, we've got a, is it
So-
just, there's not
We
just
have-
one insurance company that's.
No,
covered.
No,
we
sir.
have
It's
multiple.
a quota, yes, there's multiple insurance carriers above the $5 million retention that provide the whole $150 million of insurance coverage in the towers. You know,
So-
it's a quota share, kind of lay a cake.
So earlier this year, we had a claim that exceeded the $5 million retention, unfortunately, and I think 3 different insurance companies wound up paying some portion of it because it got through the first, second, and finally to the 3rd layer of insurance company.
Wow, okay. Is the state or the federal government involved in this process at all anyway? I mean,
In our insurance coverage, no, sir.
so, I mean, it would seem to me, I mean, and I'm just thinking out loud now, I guess, shouldn't there be some federal government involvement in this program, the Federal Transit Authority or somewhere? I mean, if our liability is $100 million a year, you know, I mean, and I know there's how many transit agencies there are around, so that's substantial. And each has to bear its own cost.
For us, I think, and Peter can elaborate further, but we don't have sovereign immunity like some other transit agencies do, so we're a corporation like any other corporation.
Okay, and
Yeah.
we've tried to deal with that sovereign immunity stuff before, haven't we? Or we not had any luck at the state level with it?
Yeah, partially, it's the MARTA Act doesn't provide it to us directly, but in addition to that, the case law has determined that providing of transit throughout the state of Georgia, you do not have sovereign immunity because it's not a governmental function, is how they look at it. So ideally, we would love to have immunity. It's not something I anticipate would be easily to get. I don't see our external relations folks here, so they won't throw anything at me. It's just the General Assembly, you know, the makeup, you know, includes a lot of members of the bar that would probably be opposed to providing us sovereign immunity.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Al?
Could you go back to the summary slide with the tables? Yeah, no, that one. How
This-
much money have our insurance carriers had to pay for our claims over the last 2 or 3 years? I'm just trying to get a sense for, with what we have for limits versus what we are paying out. Do you understand the question?
Yes, I would have to go back and get you that information to give you a specific number, but right now, since we've switched to the $10 million retention in 2019, we've had no insurance companies that have had to pay out on claims. We've had some, when that was $5 million, there have been payouts by those insurance carriers, and I can get you the
No, I
exact
don't-
numbers, so.
Don't need the information, I'm
Uh-huh.
just thinking, and you go through all of this, but I'm just wondering, is there a benefit in increasing our deductible if we're not reaching into our insurance policies too often? If we're not exceeding those thresholds, would we, and you have to go through all of that, I'm sure you
Yep.
have.
Rather than just answer it off the cuff, I would say that we can look at that, and that would be a decision that, you know, I could bring back to the board, you know, at some point if you wanted to increase the retention. So we could certainly look at that.
I'm just thinking out loud, or suggesting, is that an option, that's all.
It's always an option. It just depends on, you know, whether that's something we want to assume, you know, on a per-claim basis, so.
Okay, I don't see any other desire to speak, so let's go ahead and call the question. The motion passes. Donna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the license subscriptions and support for VMware vRealize products and services IFB B50331. Nancy Joseph, Director of Technology, Infrastructure, and Production.
Yes.
Floor
Good
is
morning.
yours.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, and Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Nancy Joseph. I'm the Director of Technology, Infrastructure, and Production in the Department of Technology. This is my first time presenting to the board, so I apologize in advance. I'm here to present a request for resolution authorizing the award of a contract for license subscriptions and support for VMware vRealize product and services, IFB B50331. Next slide, please. Okay. This request is to award a 3-year contract for licenses and support services for VMware vRealize, which is the virtual server software used to managing and operating virtual servers for both on-prem within our infrastructure and in the cloud environment. This software provides flexibility in moving application from one server to another in case of a server failure, the need for additional storage space, or other network adjustment needed. Next slide, please. Okay. On July 12, 2023, a notice to bidder was sent to 56 vendors. Notice of the invitation for bid was advertised in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Georgia Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and on MARTA's website. Sync Network Solution LLC was determined to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. As this is a software purchase only, there's no DBE gold assigned. This 3-year contract in the amount of $898,064.40 is funded with local capital funds. Next slide, please. Okay. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee recommend approval for the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the license, subscription, and support for VMware vRealize product and services, IFB B50331, to NetSync Network Solution LLC in the amount of $898,064.40. Next slide, please. Thank you. I now
Thank
pass it
you.
back to-
Entertain a motion and a second to move this forward to the full board. Okay, appropriately moved and seconded. Discussion. Rod?
Yeah, just got a couple of questions. So when this says virtual server software, does that mean that this is in the cloud software, or how does this software fit into what I think of as a server system that I thought was much more physically located as opposed to in the cloud? What is this
We have
software?
physical, we have virtual servers within our data center as well within our cloud environment.
Okay, so they're
So-
located in both. And then how does this server work for us? I mean, what happens, you say what do you move around on this server that makes it?
If we have a failure at HQ and we needed to move some of our application over, it makes it real easy for us to duplicate that, whatever's on that platform to the next. So we have different type of application running on it, whether it's AFC stuff, whether it's CCTV stuff. We have different stuff that are configured within those server environment.
Okay. And then my next question is, so we do constant backups.
Yes, we do.
So are these backups held on this software, or are they held?
No, it is being held on a storage
Okay.
platform.
But it does allow you to move that from one storage location to
Yeah,
another?
just to copy it and really fast.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill?
I'm just a little more curious about why you threw out the low bidder. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, I understand I see your explanation for it there, but I'm curious as to, it's $100,000 difference and why you would exclude that for what, I mean,
The lowest bidder, I'll pass it to Ms. Holland.
Good morning, Mr. Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Floyd. The lowest bidder was non-responsive because they failed to enter their unit pricing and extended pricing on the bid form. So there was no dollar amount. They put a total award amount, but nothing on the unit cost, so there's nothing to calculate.
Okay, and there's no bonding required
No.
with any of this, bid bonds or performance bonds with any of
Absolutely
this?
not, no.
Is that correct? So
Correct.
you just can't rely on a price like that if they don't do what you ask?
Right, because it was a unit price bid, and they gave us a total award amount without giving us unit
Is there
pricing.
any effort to negotiate with people like that at any time, or is that just if they don't comply with the bid requirements, they're thrown out?
So in this case, because we have so much competition, we received 6 bids, we wouldn't negotiate with them, we will go to the next lowest.
Okay, I think that's a good policy, by the way. They don't comply, they don't do the bidding the way you ask, they stand the risk of getting kicked out. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, don't see any other requests to comment or ask questions, so let's go ahead and vote on the motion. Motion passes. Don't go away. The next item on the agenda is also going to be presented by Nancy Joseph. It's a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of application-centric infrastructure leaf expansions with licenses, IFB B50261.
Okay, next. Okay, I'm here to present a request for resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of application-centric infrastructure leaf expansion with licenses, IFB B50261. Next slide, please. Application-centric infrastructure, known as ACI, is a tool to automate and simplify network configuration, deployment, and management. It is pivotal in the management of devices in the MARTA enterprise, which is all of our location within the facilities, and CCTV network. A competitive procurement was developed to expand the ACI lift connectivity at MARTA, HQ, and PCC as the devices are nearing port capacity. This contract will allow us to build additional capacity for growth and expansion as we increase the number of cameras on our system. We will purchase 4 switches and 10 transceivers. The leaf layer consists of access switches that aggregate traffic from servers and connect directly into the spine of network core. Next slide, please. On April 26, 2023, notice to bidders was sent to 15 vendors. Notice of the invitation for bid was advertised in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Journal Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and on MARTA's website. 15 firms retrieved the online solicitation and/or purchased the CD. However, no bids were received. The Department of Technology did receive quotes from 3 vendors in order to prepare an independent cost estimate prior to the solicitation. I apologize. MARTA opted to negotiate with a vendor as allowed by the MARTA Act. MARTA negotiated with the authorized seller who provided the lowest quote, Presidio Network Solution LLC. This quote also matched the GSA pricing and was determined to be fair and reasonable by the Department of Internal Audit. With no DBE vendors in this industry in the directory and no opportunities for subcontracting, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion did not set a DBE goal for this contract. This 5-year contract in the amount of $226,797.26 will be funded by the local capital funds. Next slide, please. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of application-centric infrastructure lift expansion with licenses IFB B50261 to Presidio Network Solutions LLC in the amount of $226,797.26. Next slide, please. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion and a second. All right, we have that. Open the floor for questions. Rod?
Just a couple questions. So notices went out to 15 vendors. There were no bids received. So how did we determine Presidio? Is that the one that we're currently using?
We do business with Presidio, but,
All right. Is that fair to say?
excuse me?
Okay, the Presidio Network Solution, is that who we currently have business with now?
Yes, we do have business with them.
That
Hey,
makes
Rod?
sense. Yes.
Rod, we talked about this in our pre-meeting, and if you don't mind, I'll just share my understanding.
Okay.
So MARTA reaches out to vendors to say, what do you think this ought to cost, so that we have an idea of, all right, this is a reasonable cost that we should expect? And Presidio was one of 3 firms that put an estimate back to us, so we knew about what we were going to be looking at. So when we didn't get any bids, the MARTA Act allows us to go back to those that provide estimates for us to base, our estimation on, and to negotiate with one of them in order to have a contractor with which to work. And I'm guessing that Presidio provided the lowest bid
Out of the
of the
3.
3 that we
Yes.
received as an estimate.
All right.
And that's why we chose to approach them, and that's how it happened.
Okay, okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes sense for me. All right.
Okay, I don't see any other requests to, Sagira?
Just real quick, of note, this was also the lowest bidder in the previous presentation, correct?
NetSync was the first one. NetSync Solution
That
was
was
the
the
previous.
approved bid, was the lowest bidder in the
Oh,
previous.
the lowest bidder.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, thank you.
go ahead.
Okay, you good? All right, I don't see any other requests to speak, so we'll call the question. All right, the motion passes.
Chair, can you add me as a 4, please?
Yes, Sagira?
Thank you. Can you add me as a 4, please?
Okay, Sagira voted yes. All right. Victor Hall, please approach the lectern. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for multifunctional printers, lease and maintenance services B50184. Mr. Hall.
Good morning, Chairman Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and other members of the Business Management Committee. My name is Victor Hall, and I'm now acting AGM of Technology, and I'm here to present a request for authorization of a modification and a contractual authorization for the multifunctional printer lease maintenance services, IFB B50184. Next slide, please. In May of this year, the board approved an award of a contract to Canon Solutions America Incorporated in the amount of $1,346,353.04 for the lease and maintenance of services for multifunctional printers used throughout the authority. The contract includes a base cost for the leasing of the equipment as well as a variable cost based on usage, which we refer to as click charges. The contract is for 3 years with 2 one-year options. All 3 vendors that submitted a bid included the usage charges as a 1-month cost for each of the 5 years rather than a yearly 12-month over the life of the contract, which is 60 months. The total value of the usage charge were not included in the contract value presented to the board. Therefore, we are making this request to modify the contract to add $423,940 to cover the usage charges for all leased printers, devices through the entire term of the contract. This would increase the contract value to a now total of $1,770,293.04. Next slide. The Department of Technology requests the Business Management Committee to recommend approval of this resolution authorizing the modification and contractor authorization for multifunctional printer lease and maintenance services, IFB B50184 to Canon Solutions America Incorporated in the amount of $1,770,293.04. $293.04. Next slide. Thank you. I now return the floor to you, Mr. Durrett.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion and a second. All right, we've got it on the floor for comments, and if you don't mind, I'm going to provide my colleagues with my translation of what we're dealing with here. I believe that what happened is the staff, when they presented the initial recommendation to us, made a little goof, and they didn't include the monthly charge times 12 to go into the dollar amount that was presented to us, even though it was provided in the proposal or the bid. And they recognize that now, and they're coming back to us and saying, we need to add this charge for copies into the contract. So that is, this is a correction that they're bringing to us. So it would not have made an impact. We would still go with Canon. Any other questions or comments? Ooh, I did it. Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the resolution. Waiting for my screen to change. Kenny, are we close? Is it? Hey, Al, for some reason. Okay, do you vote yes? All right, then the motion passes. Thank you very much for
Thank you
the
all.
presentation. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for CCTV offline camera remediation, IFB B50298. Again, Nancy Joseph, we put it out in that order so you could get a few more steps in today.
That works.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm here to present a request for resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the CCTV offline camera remediation, IFB B50298. Next slide, please. This request pertains to the procurement of 300 digital closed-circuit television cameras, 600 switches, and associated hardware devices that will be employed to upgrade the aging cameras currently in use at our rail stations. This initiative represents less than 10% of our existing camera fleet and is intended to stabilize our infrastructure. Our objective is to replace outdated analog camera with digital technology, which will result in increased camera coverage and greater reliability of the devices. Moreover, acquiring these new cameras will enable us to leverage video analytics and other emerging system enhancement more effectively. Next slide, please. Notice to bidders was sent to 16 vendors. Notice of the invitation for bid was advertised in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Georgia Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and on MARTA's website. 51 firms retrieved the online solicitation and/or purchased the CD. 6 bids were received. CDWG was determined to be the lowest responsive and responsible bidder with a bid of $1,204,813.75. There's no DBE gold assigned to this contract, as there are no DBE vendors in this industry and in the directory. This is the purchase of hardware only, and the work will be performed by MARTA staff. The contract will be funded by local capital funds. While this is a one-year stabilization effort, note that we will return later with a more comprehensive contract to replace all cameras in the system. Next slide, please. The Department of Technology Request the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the award of the contract for the CCTV offline camera remediation, IFB B50298, to CDWG in the amount of $1,204,813.75. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion and a second to put this on the floor. All right, we have it there. So I'll begin. So this is for 300 cameras, and you said later we're going to come back and we're going to do the rest of the cameras.
Yes.
Could you give us a sense of the order of magnitude? If this is 300, what's the whole population?
We have a few thousand cameras throughout all of our 52 sites. But when we did the initial assessment, we look at cameras that really needed to be online and function.
Yeah.
So that's what we're tackling. And then we're working in parallel to build that plan to stabilize the environment, introducing all of the new features that Chief Cryer and team are requesting.
Okay, so this is the highest priority,
It is,
first tranche, if you will.
yes.
Okay, and now, the other thing I want to say is I'm really glad that you said closed circuit TV, because when I look at that, I'm thinking closed caption TV, which is how my wife and I now watch all TV programs,
Thank you.
given our youth. Rod?
Yeah, I think the approach of doing, certain amount of the cameras to see how they work and function actually in the environment, right? Because they have
Yes.
to be installed, you have to see if they're really going to perform. And,
Yes.
And make you, I'm sure to give you a chance to evaluate whether they're what we want to go forward with for the other 1,000 cameras that we're
Exactly.
going to purchase. So I'm glad to see us moving in that direction, because the camera quality, as you know, is just critical to everything that we're trying to see across the
It is a huge
landscape,
investment.
Right? So, okay, great. Thank you. That's just a
Thank you.
comment. Appreciate it.
Bill?
Is the result of the bid opening in here somewhere and I just missed it?
Is there?
The result of the bid opening in here somewhere and I just missed it?
I'm guessing yes.
Well,
In the report, right?
It should be part of the contract award analysis, Mr. Floyd.
Yeah, 32 firms received, 6 bids.
Yeah, the results from that bid opening, are they in here somewhere and I
It
just missed
should
it?
be, it
Oh,
should
oh,
be in
I
the,
see.
it
Scroll down
should be
one
in
more
the
page.
contract award analysis section, where it would
Okay.
list out.
Okay, but all of them are not in here, are they? Are they in?
All
Yeah,
s-
actually,
all
they're-
6 of them should be in there.
Okay, all right. Sorry.
Bill, you good?
No, but I'm all right. I just don't see it.
Okay.
I'll find it. That's all right. Maybe I'll find it. Not for sure I'll find it. Maybe I'll.
I actually understand your point because I don't see it on my online, but I believe when it was sent to us, it was there.
And that may well have been, yeah.
Okay, Bill, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm
Okay. Not seeing any other requests to comment, let's go ahead and vote on the resolution. Resolution passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this next item on the agenda. It's a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the replacement of the existing public-facing website platform, RFP P50441. David Emery, welcome to the lectern.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Hurley, and members of the Business Management Committee. My name is David Emery. I'm the Senior Director of Customer Technology. I'm here to speak to item 7 on your agenda, which concerns our proposed replacement of MARTA's public-facing website. It's marta.com. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to cover here is a little bit about the background and why we want to proceed with this project now, talk some about the proposed benefits and enhancements that we're looking to get out of this project. our proposed phasing and costs, the timeline and next steps, and finally I'll be making a request for approval to move ahead with solicitation of this project. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. It'sMARTA.com, our public website, is of course one of our major channels for communication with our riders and with the general public at large. We receive close to 1 million page views per month across the site. The single most requested resource is the Trip Planner, which receives almost 50,000 views. And it's an increasingly mobile audience. We're currently at 72% of traffic from mobile devices, from phones and tablets, and that number has been increasing. So that's something that I think it's important to keep in mind as we move forward with the next generation of the site. In terms of history, the last refresh we did for It'sMARTA.com was about 8 years ago, and that was really more of a cosmetic update. It was focused on the kind of look and feel of the site, but it did not really touch the underlying logic and software, what we call the Content Management System, or CMS, which is the software we use to manage content on the site. That software is really urgently in need of replacement. It's out of date and really presents some limitations on how we can present information to the public. So this project that we're proposing is going to replace the entire site, front end and back end, and this will be the most comprehensive overhaul of It'sMARTA.com in over a decade. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that we're looking at, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some of the things that we've called out in our process so far. The first items deal really more with the kind of service information, which is probably the #1 reason that people come to the site, just to find out, where their bus is, what the schedule is for today, are we single tracking, what's the fare, and I think we really can make that piece of the website more dynamic and seamless. I should mention customer technology is a relatively new office at MARTA. We just started it in April, and one of the other tasks that we're working on is just general improvement of the rider-facing data pipeline. So how we get information off the various source systems, our tracking systems and scheduling systems, and get those into a format that they can then be fed into our various customer-facing products. So that's the website, mobile apps, third-party apps, the digital signage. We really want that to be consistent and seamless across all these channels. And the website's obviously an important part of that. So I think there's a lot we can do to make this information more user-friendly, more dynamic. Say you're at the page for a specific route and it's a Saturday and we're doing single tracking. We want you to see the actual schedule that's being run that day and not just the default Saturday schedule. Today you have to go to a separate part of the site and it's not the most intuitive process, and we really want to make that more seamless, more intuitive for our riders. Outside of service information, there's a lot of other purposes that we use the website for. One example is just letting people know what MARTA is working on in terms of our projects, our capital expansion program, our state of good repair program. So we'll be looking to do enhanced project tracking, just create like a one-stop shop where people can go and get information on timelines, on projects, documents, and we'll be asking the vendor for a kind of customized solution for that piece. There'll be some important integrations with other systems, other customer-facing systems that are moving forward. The Customer Relationship Management, or CRM system, that the board just authorized solicitation for this month, I believe. That will be an important integration. That's how customers kind of manage their customer support tickets. We want that to be part of the site. The AFC, the new fare system, is obviously a big project we'll be working on, and that's going to be an important part of this too, in terms of being able to manage your your wallet and your payment account, and those are of course separate systems on the back end, but from the front end standpoint, we really want this to feel like a single seamless experience. We don't want people to have to enter different usernames and passwords in different areas. We want this to be just a single seamless experience as much as possible. The last few items deal more with just the general functionality. I mentioned the mobile first audience before, so mobile optimization and kind of creating an app-like experience on the phones is going to be, I think, an important goal here. Information security and overall reliability will, of course, be a concern across this project, and also accessibility, and really trying to make the site as inclusive as possible in terms of designing for people who use screen readers and multiple language support. That's going to be an important principle for the larger project. Next slide, please. In terms of the phasing and cost, we're proposing 4 phases to this project. The first phase will be more of a discovery and needs assessment phase. This is where we really step back and look at who are we designing this for, who's the audience, both external, internal. We'll be doing probably some customer journey mapping and looking at customer personas. We did some work around that with the AFC project, I thought was very successful. We'll be looking at everything we've done in the past in terms of getting suggestions from our riders through the advisory council and other channels. So just understanding who we're doing this for and what the kind of hopes and expectations are for the site. We estimate that'll take probably about 3 months. Then we'll move into phase 2, which is really the core design, development, and deployment of the site. We believe that'll take about a year. Phase 3 is the enhancements. We wanted to kind of pull that out into a separate phase because some of those third-party projects, or actually not third-party, but kind of separate projects like the CRM and AFC, those will be moving on their own timelines, and we don't want for those integrations to hold up the larger deployment of the site, but we do want to make sure that we call those out separately because those are going to be important integrations here. Then finally, phase 4 is ongoing operations and maintenance. We're planning for 7 years of support, and we really want the vendor to be engaged throughout this process. So if we need to make changes or if their technologies are going to change, we want this site to be able to keep up with the latest trends. So we really hope to have the vendor engaged and possibly even host the site itself. That's a decision we still need to make. But the anticipated cost we expect will be in this range of 1.9 to 2.8 million over 7 years. That includes all the software, any custom development services, and up to 6 years of O&M. And part of the reason for that range is that there are still some decisions we need to make about what MARTA is going to be responsible for, what the vendors can be responsible, particularly as it pertains to maintenance going forward. We will be working with DNI to set a DB8 goal as part of this process. Next slide, please. So in terms of our timeline and next steps, we have a budget approval for this as a capital project. We are well into the process of drafting technical requirements and the scope of work. We are now at the point where we are coming to the committee and board to seek approval to move forward with solicitation. If we are granted that approval, our plan is to finish the scope by the end of this year, calendar year, and then put this on the street in January if we can, start of the year. Under that timeline, we'd be coming back to the board sometime late spring, likely with a selected vendor. And our plan is to have this underway in terms of actual implementation by the end of the fiscal year, so summer of next year. And then that will get us into the actual implementation phase. Again, it's probably going to be about 1.5 years of work. So expect maybe a new website online sometime in the second half of 25, calendar year 25. Next slide, please. So our request is that the Business Management Committee recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the itsmarta.com website replacement. Next slide. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, David. Entertain a motion and a second to put this before us for discussion. Okay, we've got it. Questions, comments? Sagira?
Thank you for the presentation. I know you have your back-end testing, but can you explain to me your process for your front-end user experience testing, if you do any?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be an important part, and I think we'll be, well, one, we are looking to kind of expand our UX expertise within MARTA. This new customer technology office will be hiring a UX specialist that will be kind of guiding that process, and will bring some expertise around UX testing. I think we'll also be looking to the vendor there. But I mean, I think our overall philosophy there is going to be very focused on accessibility, looking at latest standards. I mean, we haven't set a specific target, but it's probably going to be the WCAG 2.2, which is the latest kind of gold standard for web accessibility, mobile accessibility. Obviously, testing across devices, we'll need to decide, which kind of generations we support, but making sure that this works on all of our targeted platforms, mobile, desktop, different browsers. And I think we'll be developing a strategy where we do internal testing, we do some automated testing, and then I'd like to do some testing actually with riders, maybe get focus groups, and I know we're going to do some sort of like a beta launch of the site before it's out fully to the public, and we'll be able to reach out to our advisory council, to MARTA Army, Propel, any kind of groups that might want to be part of that. So we definitely want to have a robust process there around the testing.
I think David scratched your itch there at the end there. Get Propel to do it. I hope you guys realize we got the right nerd in charge of this, you know. Bill?
Well, yeah, I was going to agree with that, but first of all, I'm asking these questions because I don't understand any of this. None of those acronyms or abbreviations you use mean anything to me at all. So you should know that I'm asking these questions out of ignorance because I don't know where the back end ends and the front end start. I have no idea where that line is. But it's obvious to me that when we've got 1 million hits a month on this site,
That's our
it's
current.
something we need to pay some attention to.
Yeah.
With somebody that knows. And while I don't understand it, you have convinced me that you understand it,
Yeah.
which is a big step in my line. But anyway, I guess my question is, if there is a question here, it's with 1 million people a month looking at this site, how do we, I mean, this needs to be something that we focus on, because this is how people are, it appears to me that how people are communicating with MARTA now is through website action. And I know my simple use of it is when I need to catch a train, excuse me, I can look at what time the next train's due at the Decatur station. I can go there and figure out how to get there. That's about my extent of it. But we got a 7-year project here. Well, in 7 years, we're not going to know. I mean, none of the stuff we think we know today, we're not is even thought of now. I am smart enough to know that this thing is changing. How do we keep up with the times? How do we make sure that MARTA's doing what it needs to do in order to communicate with our riders and enhance our riders and to make the riding experience more available and more attractive and easy for use?
Yeah. No,
Is that a legitimate question?
No, it's a great question, and it's something we're thinking about as we draft the scope. I mean, I think we really do want to focus on kind of flexibility going forward if we need to make changes, and that's why, you know, I mentioned having a vendor who's involved and kind of available in an on-call support capacity as we go forward. You know, because you're right, things are going to change. We don't know what the landscape's going to be like in 5, 6, 7 years in terms of web technology, mobile technology. I think one thing we've learned from the current website is that you know, the vendor that did the last refresh hasn't really been that involved since we did the initial. It was just sort of like a one-off, you know, redesign the site, and then it hasn't really changed a lot in the last 5 years, and it's been more than 5 years now. And it's been a little frustrating when we want to make changes, and particularly any sort of major changes or technology changes. So we're really trying to write the scope in a way that it's kind of like, it's modular. It embraces sort of open architecture. So if we need to swap this piece out or upgrade this system, you know, we can do that as part of this. And you know, you're right. We don't know where things are going to be in you know, by the end of this term, but we do want to just give ourselves the ability as much as we can to adapt to whatever is next.
Okay, now that's my last non-understanding is something you alluded to there. Is, you know, with my little business website, I can't keep up with that, okay? And and it's tough to get somebody to deal with it. If you want to add something, you know, something happened that we want to put on the website, make access to, it's hard to get somebody to do that. Is that something MARTA is looking to do internally, or will this enhancement of this website mean that we'll have an advisory person out here, and it's a private firm that helps us with this, or is MARTA going to do this internally?
So on a day-to-day basis, our hope is that MARTA will be able to make content changes internally. If, you know, we want to upload information about, you know, the holiday bus or something, you know, we can go in, we can upload that content without having to go through a vendor. So that's part of the scope, is to really make that piece of it as kind of user-friendly as possible, with the users in that case being us, being the internal stakeholders. So yeah, we will be looking to really maximize that. I think we do still need to think about kind of like how is this going to be managed going forward within MARTA in terms of like you know, who provides support to you know, different departments that want to make changes. So I think there are going to be some staffing you know, questions we need to resolve as the site comes online. But you know, it's definitely something we're thinking about, because that is a challenge for us right now. It's become more difficult for offices within MARTA to just maintain their own content on the site, and a lot of it has to go through you know, through technology right now. And I think our hope is to make it so that, there's not a bottleneck, so that anyone can go on and do more of kind of self-serve administration of the site.
Okay, my last question is we have 4 or 5 different apps MARTA has,
Yeah.
and there may be more than that, but I'm aware of 3 or 4 that.
Oh, sure.
Will they tie into this website somehow?
So we're going to be, and we're already beginning a separate kind of parallel process to refresh the app and probably replace the app. But I will say that we definitely want to maintain a consistent experience across these products. I mean, they are separate products. The mobile app is its own piece of software that gets deployed to the App Store. So it's a separate piece of software from the website. But we want it to look consistent, and we want it to have the same information. I mentioned this data pipeline that we're working on to improve trip planning and improve rider information. We want it to be the same results that you get on the app that you get on the website, and it's on the digital signs. So I mentioned we're bringing on some UX, user experience design capacity to really focus on that specific task to make sure that this is a seamless experience. I mean, it will be separate products, and we will likely be coming back to the board with a request regarding the mobile app in the next 6 months or so. But
You're responsible for that too,
yeah,
is that
yeah.
right?
So customer technology was created to kind of manage that portfolio of customer-facing digital products, primarily the website, the mobile apps, and the digital signage.
Okay, because we just spent a lot of money on a new fare system, or about to, and I'm wondering, I mean,
Yep.
you need to be involved in that
Yeah.
somehow.
Oh, and we are, and with AFC, one of our key requirements with the AFC procurement was that they provide the flexibility for us to integrate that into our other systems, however we see appropriate. So this, not to get too technical, but this gets into kind of how these systems interface, these APIs we call them, where these systems can talk to each other kind of in a programmatic way, and whichever direction we decide to go with the app, with the website, we expect the AFC site to be able to integrate into that seamlessly, and that's something that we'll be working with both vendors to do.
Bill, behind bringing technology and the customer experience group together under the one umbrella, so that a lot of our technological advances are definitely customer focused. We start there and move backwards into the organization, making sure that it's coordinated and seamless. And David, just something I picked up on when Bill was asking, if I go to the new app, to the new website, I will have access from that platform to all the other apps that Bill's talking about, correct?
That's right. I mean, the idea is for the website to kind of provide a common interface for these other systems.
So
for
you won't
the
have to look
trip-
elsewhere, it'll all
for the
be
trip
on the
planner.
one.
Yeah, for the trip planner. AFC is going to be a big one. The vendor that we've selected for AFC, and it is well known in the industry for kind of open architecture and interoperability. So I'm very excited about that. So I think we'll be in a good position there in terms of.
Okay, is this something you can bid? I mean, I guess there are vendors out there that
sure.
do this kind of thing, but.
Right. I think what we'll be looking for is some kind of a multidisciplinary team that gets formed that includes software development expertise, web development, design, that first phase, which is more of a kind of customer journey mapping phase. That could be more of a specialty role. But yeah, we've had some conversations with vendors that focus on various parts of the process, and I expect there'll be some sort of a larger digital agency that is the prime. But I think
Okay,
the idea is that
and where does cybersecurity fit into all this? That's my last point.
That's I think a concern across the whole process. We definitely want to make sure that this is secure and that we're thinking about any risks, and we've got kind of an internal kickoff meeting next Monday here with cybersecurity, with IT, so to kind of finish the scope and plan for the future of the project. So yeah, no, they'll be involved every step of the way here.
Okay, well, thank you for putting up with my questions, because
Yeah, thank you.
I still remember Target 4 or 5 years ago when they got cybersecurity, they got in through the heating and air conditioning control system. Somehow is how they got into there and destroyed the whole company. So my simple mind, that's what I still worry about these days. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, if you look at the Target stock price, they did not destroy that company. Sagira, you have another question?
I do. This is a follow-up to our previous discussion. Ms. Allen does such a wonderful job with the Writers Advisory Council, and you have a dedicated group of people that have a wide range of interests and talents. So I'm wondering if this is an opportunity on that, again, on that user experience side, to do more than just get feedback from them, but actually give them some more responsibility in helping maybe give advice on the process of developing what that user experience process or testing will look like, as well as taking some leadership and ownership of that, because you have you want to keep them engaged, and you have a great group of people that really believe in the system, and so how do we make sure that they stay engaged in that way?
No, I think there's a lot we can do there. I mean, the RAC actually has a kind of formal suggestion, it's kind of a digital suggestion box, this Q market system, and that's like one of the first things I want to do is go, through all the archives of that to see like which of these past suggestions, relate to the website and could be incorporated into this process. But yeah, I think going forward, definitely we want to make sure that they're involved, and maybe there's, we can talk about that. There could be some sort of a subcommittee or a group or so that, works on, the website through this process.
And we've developed the habit of
And-
bringing
oh, yeah.
RAC into a lot, everything from the new trains where they had,
Yeah.
real leadership roles and going out there and looking at the equipment, providing feedback and giving us suggestions. Same mentality when we're going into our
Yeah, and
handheld equipment.
I neglected to mention that also the MAC committee, the Mobility Accessibility Committee, will be an important stakeholder here, particularly as it comes to kind of inclusive design and accessibility of the site.
David, thank you.
Thank
Let's
you.
go ahead and vote on the resolution. Resolution passes. Thank you very much. The last item on the agenda are other matters for information only. They weren't, the financials and the KPIs weren't sent out initially, but you have access to them now. And Collie, I'll mention one thing regarding that. When you look at bus and rail ridership, we're pretty close to what we budgeted, but passenger revenue is, it's different. It's less, and not less by an order of, what the bus and rail ridership looks like. So I'd like to understand, that, the math behind that.
That's in the, let me just get to that chart, Jim. Passenger revenues, okay, yeah, so the current, but that's really, it's the budgeting, and we can see that the current year is, while it's tracking close to prior years, the actual, it's really not where the budget needs to be. So that may be something that Greg can shed some light on for us.
I see you jumped up.
I did jump up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So addressing the question directly, I think, well, if you take a look at the ridership, you will notice that although rail's tracking right at our forecast, bus is still a little bit below the forecast. So that's a piece of it, is that bus is below it. The biggest blow is probably those two TMAs that we had talked about at the quarterly briefing.
Yeah.
Because what that represents is block sales of passes, whether those pass holders ride or not. And so I think with the loss of some of those, you lost some of the revenue, the passenger revenue, that was not necessarily directly connected to ridership.
Okay.
And so, and that was a pretty big hit, honestly. And so I think going forward, that's going to be one of our initiatives, is to try and continue to reach back out to that community and see if there's additional opportunities for those bulk sales, going forward more directly rather than through the TMA.
Very good. Thank you.
Sir.
Anything else to come before this committee? Then we have finished our work and we will adjourn. Thanks, everybody who presented.
First item on the agenda is the approval of last month's minutes. Could I get a motion and a second, please? Where's my checklist? Where's the motion? Oh, there we go. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any additions to the minutes? If not, can we please vote? All right, we have approval. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for portable mobile bus lifts, and that'll be led by Charles Chafin, Director of Bus Maintenance. Charles?
They're trying to pull up the presentation now.
You'll have to wing it.
I could probably handle that.
Mr.
That's
Bond,
right.
in the meantime, if I may, I've been informed that we're not going to have a quorum of the planning committee, so we're going to have to postpone that meeting until the December 7th board meeting, and just take it up as the full board at that time. We'll make another announcement at the end of this committee meeting, but I just want you all to be aware of that at this point.
Okay. So would that would be before the board meeting, though?
We would probably just do it during the board meeting and just let the entire board meet, or we can handle it before. We'll discuss it with the chair on how they want to handle it.
Well, I meant 30 minutes before, 15 minutes.
Something like that. We're going to discuss with the chair and make sure we have enough people here to do it.
Okay. Okay, Charles, so you got it?
No, we still don't have it up there yet. What now? Okay.
At least it's on this side.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Charles Chafin. I'm the Director of Bus Maintenance. I want to bring your attention to agenda item number 2, which is a resolution authorizing award of a contract for portable mobile lifts, IFB B50325. Next slide, please. The current state we're at the Browns Mill facility is all the lifts are in-ground post lifts. They're not changeable for different bus configurations, so they're not applicable for the 30-foot, 35, and 60-foot buses that we have in our fleet. They require in-ground plumbing and additional hydraulic holding tanks. They're approximately 30 years old, which is causing a timely repair manner to get these lifts fixed when they go down, and it takes a whole bay out of operation when they do go down. Next slide, please. This contract will support the Browns Mill heavy maintenance lift rehab with replacing all these lifts with mobile wireless column lifts. These lifts are generally 20 to 25-year useful life, and then this contract will also include all the safety equipment, including jacks and jack stands, to support the vehicles when they're up in the air. Next slide. What is included? So it is 16 sets of wireless mobile column lifts, which is 48 each. These are standalone units, so it will reduce our environmental footprint. We won't need the additional hydraulics, fluids, or any kind of in-ground plumbing for these. It's going to include 16 sets of varying height jack stands, so that we can go low all the way up to the high rise for doing transmissions and rear ends and so forth. It's going to include training for technicians. Now, this is not new to MARTA. We do have some of these lifts already on ground because we had to purchase them for the articulated buses. So our team is aware of these and already used some of these at some of our facilities. And this is also the way our peer groups are going with their lifts in the future. I've actually been doing these lifts for about 10 years now at different, before my MARTA life. So they are the way our peer groups are going. It's going to come with a 1-year full warranty. And then this contract has local repair support. They're local right in North Atlanta. Next slide, please. The contract term is for 1 year, no options. FTA funds will be utilized for this purchase. It's been determined the price is fair and reasonable. There was no DBE goal assigned, and the reason for that, it's a very small market. There's only a couple of manufacturers in the United States, and since it is local, the transportation was just not advantageous because it's a short drive to deliver them to our Browns Mill facility. There was 2 bids received, and this bid was considered fair, or considered responsive and responsible. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization of a resolution to enter into a contract with Heavy Duty Lift in the amount of $1,011,004 to support the MARTA Heavy Bus Maintenance. Next slide, please. I now turn it back over to you, Chairman Pond, for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chafin. Could I have a motion and a second for this resolution? Moved by Williamson, seconded by Durrett. Any questions, discussion? Yes, Ms. Johns.
Quick question, is that 1-year warranties like an industry standard for that type of equipment?
Yes, ma'am, it is. And with this type of equipment, there's very little, knock on wood, that normally goes wrong with them. It has a set of batteries in there. That's about the most maintenance you really have to do on these style lifts, and then just taking care of the wheels on the bottom. So it's very minor repairs needed on these style lifts.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Scott.
In reading, I know what I'm seeing, and I just want to understand completely. FTA, all FTA funds?
80%. It is the 80% grant. Yes, ma'am, it is a grant that we're trying to spend, that we've had for quite a while, that we're using for these lifts.
And the no DBE goal assigned was by MARTA?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, can we please vote? The motion passes.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for wheel set overhaul and repair services, and that'll be led by Doug Miller, Director of Rail Car Maintenance. Doug?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Doug Miller, and I'm the Director of Rail Car Maintenance. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 3, requesting a resolution authorizing award of a contract for procurement of wheel set overhaul and repair services, IFB B50287. Next slide, please. I will speak to these areas and then present the resolution for consideration. Next slide, please. The wheel and axle assembly constitutes one of the critical integral components of our heavy rail vehicles and require regular inspection and repair and/or overhaul. Wheels are under constant wear and tear and require regular rework. Well-maintained wheels ensure longer car life and a smooth and comfortable ride for MARTA customers. I think all of us have probably been on a rail car at some point that had flats on the wheels, and we use a lathe and we true the wheels to make them round again, and then over time, the wheels and the defects get smaller and smaller, and eventually they need to be replaced. That's kind of how it works. This contract involves overhaul, repair, and testing of the gear units and axle bearing seats, and replacement of wheels, axles, journal bearing, gearbox seals, and ground rings. The services furnished under this contract will maintain adequate quantities of spare components to support the daily maintenance demands and will support the preventative maintenance and L-Care schedule, which ensures that we have vehicles available to meet the daily service requirements. As you may remember, L-Care is our life cycle and reliability enhancement program. This is our long-term program where we overhaul components on the rail cars at prescribed intervals in order to maintain them in like new or at least serviceable condition. As I discussed before, over time, the wheels wear down from running and from being cutting, and then eventually need to be replaced. We do the truck rebuilds, which use the wheel and axle assemblies in-house, and that's in-house labor, and most of our rebuilds are done in-house. There's just several key things we do. We have outside contracts for. One of them is this wheel and axle contract, and because of the equipment involved and the amount and so forth. And then another would be the traction motor overhauls, when traction motors need overhauls. We have a few key contracts, but most of it we do with our personnel in-house. Next slide, please. The requested resolution authorizes the general manager or CEO or his delegate to enter into contract for the procurement of wheel set overhaul and repair services with UTC RAS LLC. This is a 3-year reoccurring contract with a 1-year option for a total of about $9.25 million as indicated. This is funded with local operating and capital funds from the approved fiscal year budgets. Funds for subsequent fiscal years will be included in subsequent annual budgets. You may remember I came in the fall, we did an extension on this contract. We added about $1.7 million because of supply chain issues and all. We wanted to get orders in. So this is the follow-up from that. When I came to you before, I indicated that we needed this extension and we would be coming with the full contract. So this is that. This is that full contract that we're going to put in place to ensure we have continuity of these parts. Next slide, please. On August 4th, 2023, notice to bidders were sent to 5 vendors for this procurement. Notice of invitation for bids was advertised in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Georgia Procurement Registry, the Georgia Local Government Access Marketplace, and on MARTA's website. 18 firms retrieved the online solicitation and/or purchased the CD. This is a firm fixed price contract. This means we pay a fixed price for the unit's overhaul based for the work required on each up to the limit of the contract. We overhaul and pay for the units as needed. There is no minimum. We use what we use on this contract. It's a mechanism for us to get this work done as it's needed throughout the life of the contract. On the bid opening date and time of September 22nd at 2023 at 2 p.m., 1 bid was received. UTC RAS LLC submitted the single bid in the amount of $9,254,784.04 and was determined to be responsive and a responsible bidder. The Department of Internal Audit will conduct a price analysis to confirm that the prices are fair and reasonable. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion assigned a 15% disadvantaged business goal, DBE goal, to this procurement, which was met. So this is a niche market that there's really only 3 vendors in the U.S. who do this work. Typically in the past, we've had 2 of the 3 usually bid on this contract. This time we only had 1, so I called the vendors to see what's going on. And the concern is the turbulation in the world market right now. Extremely long lead times on materials, and we're not guaranteeing a certain amount of work based on this contract. UTC had been doing work for us. They had a better feel for the fact that we are using regular work, so they felt comfortable in bidding. It's really bad. The war in Ukraine out there has really tore the heavy steel market up. So last time we ordered wheels, it took almost a year to get them in. So companies are afraid to, and it's a lot of money, so they're afraid to commit this much money and buy this stuff and have their resources hanging out there. So that was the reluctance here to do that. Next slide, please. At this time, I am requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board this resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of wheel set overhaul and repair services, IFB B50287 with UTC RAS LLC in the amount not to exceed $9,254,784.04. Chairman Pond, I will now turn it back over to you for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Could we have a motion and a second, please? All right, moved by Durrett, second by Williamson. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Miller? Jim?
Yeah, Doug, I note that this is a 3-year contract, 1-year option, and we pay as we go, so we may not use the whole capacity of this contract to do the work. So I'm just thinking about the new rail cars with all of their new trucks and new wheels and all that sort of thing. I'm sure that we've done an analysis to say, yeah, 3 years is the right term and all that sort of thing. I guess that's just a comment, Collie.
I mean, I'll start, and Doug, if you want to add into that, absolutely. That was a conversation we had, Jim, and it was, even though, you know, the first of our new rail cars will start revenue service in '25, there is up to a 5-year transformation period, so that, you know, we want to make sure that the majority of our fleet still has this insurance, if you will. It's an up-to contract, so if the infusion of new rail cars is such that we find that the usage for this truck program is diminished, and that's great news, but we just didn't want to be out there without that assurance.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is that as this goes along, the need is going to lessen as the years go by, and there's a chance that this contract could be extended if we don't use it. We've done that in the past on times. But also, we were reluctant to go too far with this contract. You could make a case we could have just had a longer contract and tried to get to the end and not do this again. But there's just too much instability in the pricing right now. Pricing is the real concern. So, you know, historically we've done this 4-year contract, so that's kind of where we landed again.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you for the information. Quick clarifying question. You said that the companies are reluctant because they don't want to have basically inventory on hand or have orders on hand in case we don't need as much work as...
Yeah, basically, like the last time, the vendor ordered 200 wheels to do this work, and it's millions to order that many wheels, or a lot of money. And so then they don't get paid until we actually order that and it comes in. So there's and it's not, it's I think the time and also the fact that they're worried that the contract would end and they would have all these wheels that they can't use.
So a follow-up to that, do we have any immediate need for these wheel and axle assemblies, right? Like,
there's
when I say immediate,
there's an ongoing continual need for them. That's why we extended the other contract, and they were able to get some orders in. And I think about 6 months ago or so, I came to you all and I gave you an update on when the supply chain issues, and we were afraid we were going to run out, and we had all the mitigations in place, and we've managed that. So we made it to the end without having any real major issues. We had to be judicious in the way we managed it. And then we had, on some of our L-Care cars, we had not done the wheels on them. They had good wheels on them, and we overhauled the trucks without changing out the wheel sets. So now we're going back and we're changing the wheel sets on those wheels, those trucks, and catching that back up so everything's back where it should be. And then moving forward, we're going to change the wheels as they wear more precisely. So there'll still be a need moving forward. So yes, there is an immediate need, but we have some. So it's just a matter of keeping the supply chain going. And we're a little afraid that at some point, if we're too far behind the 8 ball, then there'll be a gap. So that's a concern.
Thank you.
Mayor Floyd?
Is there a Buy American issue with this contract?
No, It's not federal funded, so there's no Buy America.
So that's not impact. In fact,
It really wouldn't matter. I don't think, there's nobody in America who makes them. So it's all overseas.
Got two things, Doug. You read and see, and maybe it'll be just helpful for the group, but where trains on these older systems are derailed, and you think about these old systems, particularly in the Northeast, not repairing these wheels on a timely basis could lead to that, correct?
Yes, that's exactly right. When we talk about the way it works, to give a little quick idea of this, is of course we true the wheels when there's flats. We get reported that there's a flat, and then we re-true the wheels. But also the wheels have a profile and a flange on the wheel. So as the wheel ages, every time we bring it in for inspection, we have gauges we put on the wheels, and we monitor that wear on the wheels. So when it hits a certain point, they need to be re-trued to reestablish the profile and reinstitute the flanges. So, you know, it is a safety issue for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Second question, I think this is more for George, and we talked about this in the pre-brief. This will still go back to the internal audit group to review the prices. And
Yes.
I know we're only 1 week between the committee meeting and the board meeting, but I do think it's important, when at all possible, that the internal audit group does their review before you bring it to the board for approval.
When's the board meeting?
6th of December? 6th or 7th?
Yeah,
December
First week
7th.
of December.
okay.
There was some concern about priorities and prior work assignments.
Yeah, I don't have a big concern about it making it through. This company just had a full review for the extension.
Right, I'm just making
It's the same
comment.
company, so we should be able to get that done, I hope.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Can we please vote? All right, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. The next item is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for MARTA Decatur Traction Power Supply Substation Phase 1 and 2 replacement. That'll be led by Kevin Ellis. Kevin?
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Kevin Ellis. I am the Electrical Maintenance Engineer for our Electrical Power and Equipment Department. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 4, IFB B50350. This is a resolution authorizing an award for a contract to repair the Decatur Traction Power Substation equipment. Next slide, please. The Traction Power Substation consists of several critical pieces of equipment that work together to convert the incoming Georgia Power 20,000 volt alternating current to the 750 volt direct current that is used to power our trains. We currently have 41 traction power substations that provide the traction power to our main line and train yards. Next slide, please. The Decatur traction power substation has experienced a critical failure of the traction power equipment, preventing this substation from producing power. The station is currently operating as a gap, or what we call a gap. It's a pass-through for the traction power from the adjacent traction power substations. In the event that any of the adjacent traction power substations fail, we would have a situation where we lose the ability to power the trains through this section of the track. An addendum was issued to this to include the addition of the Westlake traction power substation repairs because the repair work is similar. At Westlake traction power substation, it's currently only operating on one primary Georgia Power incoming feed and has lost the ability of a secondary or alternate Georgia Power feed. Without the redundancy, a failure of Georgia Power or the working AC equipment at this location would reduce the substation to a gap as well. It would increase the risk of losing our ability to power our trains in this area and compromising our system further. Next slide, please. We currently have a capital project known as the Traction Power Substation Replacement Program in place to address the existing traction power substations in our system that are beyond their useful life cycle. This program will be replacing the traction power substation as a whole unit, and it'll include all new components with both AC and DC needed for a fully operational traction power substation. This right here is an exterior or outdoor transformer. It's an oil field transformer. That's what converts our 20,000 volts AC and into a lower voltage AC that goes into the rectifier that converts the AC to DC. This is one that's been refurbished. They sanded it down and repainted it and refilled the oil, cleaned the oil and refilled it. So our current schedule for the existing program is two waves. Well, we got wave one has an estimated completion date of November 2026. It includes the replacement of 4 traction power substations and 1 gap breaker. The selections are there. The gap breakers is located on the west line. Wave 2 has the estimated completion date of 2028. It also includes 4 traction power substations in addition to 2 gap breaker substations. The gap breakers are on the east line, one on the east line, one on the south line. And additional waves would be added until all the aged traction power substations are replaced throughout our system. Next slide, please. The average lifespan of a typical traction power substation is 20 to 30 years, and that's based on manufacturer support. Many of our existing substations are more than 40 years old. Decatur and Westlake were not included in the Wave 1 or Wave 2 of the replacement program because the failures occurred after the program was started and the selections were made. We need an intermediate solution to address our immediate risk of serious service interruption. This is the first stabilization contract that will mitigate this risk and keep our traction power substations online and stable until the replacement program can be fulfilled. This program would run parallel with the traction power replacement program that I mentioned earlier. This contract is broken into 2 phases. Total completion is estimated for 4 months. Each phase we're estimating 90 days. Phase 1 would be the disassembly of the traction power equipment on site. The contractor would take the parts off site for recondition and repair. And phase 2 would be reassembly of the equipment on site, installation, confirm its operation, and perform all the integrity testing needed. Next slide, please. Included in your board package under agenda item number 4 is the resolution authorizing the award of a contract to repair the Decatur and Westlake traction power substations. The procurement is being funded with 100% capital funds approved in fiscal year 2024 as part of the capital improvement plan. 1 bid was received. Southeast Switchgear was the single bidder. Unfortunately, they were non-responsive, but we were able to negotiate a deal per the MARTA Act. There is the 6% DVE goal being met, and the final audit report indicated that the quote was a fair and reasonable price. At this time, I respectfully request the Operations and Safety Committee's approval of a resolution authorizing the general manager or his delegate to enter a contract with Southeast Switchgear for $385,888 for the repair of Decatur and Westlake traction power substations. Next slide.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Could we have a motion and a second? Put the item on the floor. Moved by Mr. Dewart, seconded by Mayor Floyd. Any questions from Mr. Ellis? Clear, concise presentation.
Thank you,
No
sir.
questions.
Thank you, sir. This is my
Sounds
first
like
time.
we need to get this done quick. That's all it does to me.
Kevin, is it fair to say that we'll likely be coming back to the board additional times as we do this bridge program?
Yes, sir, that is fair to say. This is probably the first of many, probably dozens of contracts that EP&E is going to initiate to stabilize and provide a reliable power for our system until the traction power replacement program can catch up.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Kevin, I think this is your first time
That's
presenting
correct.
before the
Yes, sir,
committee?
that's correct. I appreciate your patience. I'm sure you could tell a little nervous.
No, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we please vote? I think I'm missing one vote. Let's see, don't be seven here. There we go. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of track geometry testing for the MARTA rail system. That'll be led by Daniel Heck, Deputy Chief Mechanical Engineer.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, members of the board, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 5, which is the resolution authorizing award of a contract for the procurement of geometry testing services for MARTA's rail system, IFB B50237. Next slide, please. MARTA owns and maintains 104 miles of continuously welded rails on our mainline tracks with an additional approximately 20 miles of yard tracks. MARTA's Track and Structures Department visually inspects all of our mainline and yard tracks twice weekly, and then twice a year MARTA conducts automated track geometry inspection of the mainline running rails. Next slide, please. So what is track geometry testing? This is a MARTA railcar that has been outfitted with specialized electronic equipment. You can see in the photo there in the center and on the right. And this measures various elements of the running rails on the system. Next slide, please. So track geometry testing really minimizes operational delays, ensures the safety of the track system, and it guides not only the track maintenance, but the overall capital program as well. Mr. Pond, in Doug's presentation, you brought up the derailment risk. There's really 3 elements that mitigate derailments. The first is the wheel profile, the second is the railhead profile, and the third is the geometry of the 2 tracks as a whole. So this is a really critical element in derailment prevention here, in addition to ride quality and track longevity. The automated track geometry test measures the gauge, the curvature, the cross level of the rails, warp, twist, and overall rail alignment. And this uses a non-contacting optical inertial base laser system that takes measurements approximately every foot, and then it also measures the ride quality in the car at the same time. Next slide, please. So here's some pictures. These are not of MARTA's rail system, so don't worry. But it shows gauge deviations in the top left. That's where the 4 foot 8.5 inch gauge goes out of specification. The bottom shows cross level and alignment variations, and the top right shows super elevation, similar to an overpass where the roadway is curved. Our rail system is curved for ride quality given the speed. And most of this is guided by FRA standards, ARIMA standards, and MARTA's track design standards. Next slide, please. One thing to note, this also includes geometry testing of the 3rd rail. That has to be in certain alignment with our running rail, so that's included in this as well. This is a 5-year contract with a 3-year base totaling $411,000, 2 option years totaling $297,800 for a total contract price of $708,800. A notice was sent to 4 vendors. 3 bids were received. The low bidder, Holland, withdrew their bid after further discussions with MARTA. INSCO was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and they currently have the contract with us, so we have a long history of working with INSCO. MARTA has determined the price to be fair and reasonable. This contract requires expertise in geometry testing, which includes specialized equipment, training, and certifications, so therefore no DBE goal was set for this, and this is funded entirely out of the operations budget. At this time, I'm requesting that the committee recommend to the full MARTA board the award of IFB B50237 to INSCO in the amount of $708,800. Next slide. Thank you. I'll take any questions you have.
Thank you, Daniel. Could we have a motion and a second? Moved by Durrett, second by Ms. Williamson. Any questions for Mr. Hague? Ms. Jones?
bear with me. That contractor that removed their bid was more than $500,000 less than the second lowest bidder. Do they severely underbid, or do we need to think about what the cost needs to actually be?
Yeah, that's a great question. Their bid was extremely low, so we went back to them and made sure that they understood the true scope of these services and what we were expecting. And after we had that conversation, they said, yeah, we didn't understand the scope of work, so we are withdrawing our bid.
Mr. Durrett?
That's what I was going to inquire about. It looked like a big oops.
Help me, one procurement question. If you're concerned about the qualifications of the bidder, and you still do not have to accept their bid even if the numbers are close, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Let's vote, please. Motion passes. The last item is for information only. It's the key performance indicators for the operations of the system. Are there any other matters to come before this committee? If not, meeting adjourned. Yeah, there's sometimes.
Hi, Jim. How are you? Love that ugly sweater. Oh, that's not ugly.
These are not ugly sweaters.
Oh, it's not.
And they're not tacky, they're not ugly, they're
They're-
lovely.
They're lovely. Love that lovely sweater. At this time, we're going to call the Thursday, November 16, 2023, External Relations Committee meeting to order. First on the agenda, may I have a motion for approval of the July 27, 2023 External Relations Committee meeting minutes? Moved by Mr. Pond. Can I see a second? Second by Mr. Durrett. Let us vote. Meeting minutes of the July 27th, 2023 External Relations Committee meeting minutes are approved. At this time, we will have a briefing by Jennifer LaRosa, Senior Director, Government and Community Affairs. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, Chairwoman Scott, board members, CEO Colleen Greenwood, and AGM Colleen Kiernan. I'm Jennifer LaRosa, the new Senior Director of Government Affairs. Although new to the MARTA internal team, I have been a part of the state lobbying team for a number of years and am very much looking forward to leading the legislative efforts this year at the Gold Dome. I know I have very big shoes to fill, and I happen to know that because she let me borrow her tennis shoes the other day. Next slide, please. Today I'll discuss the local elections from this cycle and where they stand, as well as some activities we're expecting during the legislative session. Next slide. Here are just a few highlights from our jurisdictional municipal elections from November 7th. Incumbent mayors from Morrow, Stonecrest, Doraville, and College Park were reelected. And the Brookhaven mayoral election will go to a runoff on December 3rd between Councilmember John Park and Lauren Kiefer. DeKalb also overwhelmingly approved their SPLOST for a penny sales tax and can fund capital improvements, including transportation projects across the county. Next slide, please. Yeah. Good job, DeKalb. Under the Gold Dome this session, MARTA will be active in a number of topics ranging from transit-specific as well as statewide conversations such as tort reform. Next slide, please. With our inaugural MARTA Rapid Line coming on service in 2025, it's imperative for these lanes to be clear. As you can see here in this picture, in a day and age of Amazon, DoorDash, Uber, and more, we need to utilize all tools at our disposal to ensure the buses are able to move freely through the lanes. Camera enforcement is not only preferred over inexpensive, inflexible physical barriers, more equitable and efficient than relying on public enforcement, but also effective in practice. In a study done by NACTO in 2021 in New York City, only 2% of violators received a second violation. Next slide, please. There have been 3 MARTOC meetings held in off-season regarding bus cameras as well as noise and school cameras. MARTA camera enforcement has been a large component to each of these meetings. We have had multiple influential groups send letters of support as well as show up in person to testify on the importance of BRT and the need for the enforcement of the lanes. I'd like to thank Board Member Valencia Williamson for her powerful testimony in 2 capacities. Next slide, please. The legislative ask is to allow the jurisdictions to opt into camera enforcement for transit lanes and establish GDOT as the regulatory authority, permitting local jurisdictions the option to apply to monitor and enforce the BRT lanes, and perhaps by engaging a third-party vendor. Next slide, please. More specific to the violations, the language for the process mirrors HB 348, which amends school zone camera enforcement legislation and was passed out of the House unanimously. The penalties mirror the distracted driving legislation, which became law a few years ago. And agents operating cameras must comply by the security system and compliance set forth by the Georgia Crime Information Center Council. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, GDOT being the authority to regulate, local jurisdictions would apply to operate per GDOT's rules and regulations. And revenue from these violations would be collected by local jurisdictions and used for public safety initiatives or maintenance of the transit lanes. Next slide, please. As we've been reaching out to partners and stakeholders, we've received great support from broad coalition, including City of Atlanta, which this is also part of their legislative agenda, Cobb County, Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, Clayton Chamber of Commerce, Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, Georgia Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, and Council of Quality Growth. You'll notice that some of these groups are outside of our jurisdiction as our neighboring counties expand their transit footprint with BRT. Next slide, please. A few others that we might participate in include CDL expansion, which was a topic brought to us by our counterparts in Chatham. This would affect transit as well as other professions, creating an extensive coalition with bipartisan issue. We're still working out the details and strategy on this item, but more to come. And there are many participants in the tort reform conversation for a number of years now, so we will watch for effects as well as opportunities for MARTA. Next slide, please. In efforts to be a proactive and good partner to all of our stakeholders, we have hosted a few officials at IOC and HQ over the last few months. We'll be meeting with each of our state delegations as well as speaking to Cobb and Gwinnett County delegations. We hosted some of these groups here at HQ for a lunch and learn on the system and our legislative agenda, which is the picture you see here. We're also looking forward to spread the good word of MARTA further and wider by targeting some state committees we wouldn't typically present to, such as education and entertainment, to discuss all of our good work on things like Station Soccer, Artbound, and work with local artists like Jermaine Dupri, 21 Savage, and more. Next slide, please. I'll stop here for any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for Ms. LaRosa? Mr. Pond?
Two things. At the ARC breakfast, I was talking to the chair of MARTOC and very supportive of the BRT legislation to provide enforcement for those lanes. So your team's done a good job selling her on that particular piece of legislation. My question is, you mentioned tort reform several times. Do you have any specific agenda items in tort reform? I know that Peter will confirm that many times we're beat up over frivolous lawsuits, but is there anything specific that we're supporting in tort reform?
I don't think anything specific that we're supporting at the moment. I think they're still having some staff conversations on what parts of the conversations we want to take part in. So I can get back to you on that, but I'll lead anyone else to answer if they'd like.
No need to get back. It was just a question. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I can follow up and just let you know that we are following it closely, and obviously we have some items we'd like to see, and some that we know are, pretty high up on the food chain that probably won't get there in our priority list. But we're going to monitor it, and obviously, Jennifer and Colleen will keep you guys up to date throughout the legislative cycle on where it's going. But we're working hand in glove with them to make sure that the right things are passed if we can get it passed.
Mr. Floyd, then Mr. Durrett.
I'm interested in this enforcement BRT lane, because when we did the traffic lights years ago, we didn't get a lot of help from the legislature in getting that done. As a matter of fact, they changed the law after we'd had it in effect to make it almost unmanageable in anything. So that's a comment. My question is, has there been any conversation about including traffic light enforcement by cameras as a part of this legislation where our BRT lines cross through intersection?
So we are having conversations as a total camera enforcement issue in total. So the school camera enforcement is part of that conversation and possibly part of a strategy we would utilize for some cleanup language on that regulation. But I think that is a strategy we can consider, is the lights. But I think I'll leave it to Colleen to add some more detail on that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add super briefly that we sort of have the best of both worlds in that this camera enforcement piece is bigger than us, but also we can carve ourselves out of it. So we're kind of just watching the landscape as it unfolds and deciding whether we want to more narrowly focus our legislation to just address our limited problem, or whether it's going to be more advantageous to be part of the bigger picture.
Well, we had a bit of a preview during the MARTA meetings that Jennifer mentioned that happened over the summer, where the folks, non-metro legislators were, I would say, not interested in this, in advancing this topic. So, yeah, we're just looking for the right lane for our stay in your lane legislation.
Great joke there. I'll just add that we have to remember that these legislators are part-time, so knowing the details and ins and out of every piece is really tough. So it is up to us to go out and educate them on the specifics of our fight in this battle, and we are doing that. We are definitely doing the due diligence of meeting with them on their turf. We also have the great opportunity of special election coming up where they'll all be there again, so we are going to utilize that.
And I'll just add that we're taking solace in the fact that a lot of these other representatives and legislators are asking the right questions. So it's not that they're just outright, saying no to us. They're actually asking questions on behalf of their constituents and giving us a chance to address them. So I think the more of that kind of dialogue will help move things in the right direction.
We can only hope that more of them are more part-time than they are.
No question, Mr. Durant? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. La Rosa. Next, we will have a briefing by Catherine Durga, Director, Arts in Transit, Artbound 2023 update.
Hey, good morning, Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Kiernan, members of the committee. I'm Catherine Durga. I'm the Director of MARTA's Public Art Program, Artbound. And I'm here to give you just a review of what Artbound accomplished this year in 2023. Let's go to the next slide. So the last time I was before you, we were talking about the MARTA Council for the Arts. We were adding new members. We were missing a member from DeKalb. We have since added a member from DeKalb, Tamika Grooms, an incredible artist working on a lot of community projects. She's also a writer, a designer, and an engineer. We have tasked the MARTA Art Council with nominating additional members from DeKalb as well as Clayton County, so that's first on their list. Next slide. In January, Atlanta was visited by the National Endowments for the Arts Chair, Maria Rosario Jackson. She convened a public art roundtable and listening session, and out of that, MARTA was invited to submit an essay to a Rutledge Guidebook of Urban Cultural Planning. Our contribution will be on arts and culture planning in the transit environment. And that guidebook will be distributed at the World Cities Culture Summit in 2024. Next slide. Isn't that great? Just wanted to let y'all know that Artbound and the work that we're doing with MARTA, at MARTA, that MARTA is doing is really getting out there and people are noticing it. So in May, we installed a mural on our parking structure in Dunwoody with partnership of City of Dunwoody and the Perimeter CIDs. The mural was called Fluorochroma. Next slide. This is the before picture. As you can see, big difference. The artist was Das. He's an internationally renowned muralist, and the woman next to him is Drew Borders. She's a local Atlanta artist who was tapped to be project assistant. This is something we try to do with all of our projects, involve other artists, kind of try to bring folks along in workforce development. Next slide. This is the finished mural at Dunwoody. Fluorochroma, it involves an emphasis on nature, thinking about the Cherokee rose flower, which is the state flower of Georgia. There are azalea blossoms in there, and so really trying to bring nature back into this more urban corridor. Next slide. One thing that's neat about this mural is that if you stand across the street and you scan a QR code, you get to see this augmented reality. And so you see there's the roadway with the cars behind. Can we play it one more time? And you'll see the deer grazing, the hummingbird, very well-known sight in our backyard, a lot of our backyards. And so just a neat way to kind of add some whimsy to the mural that's already there. So we'll go to the next slide. MARTA participated in the Justice exhibition at the Emory University Science Gallery this summer. Science Gallery is an effort from Emory University. It's located in the Pullman Yards in the Kirkwood neighborhood. And our contribution was loaning, as you can see, a bus. And an artist, Sanitna, who is a local artist who lives in the neighborhood, has ridden MARTA all his life, does not drive, loves MARTA. This was a real passion project for him. And this is you see here the art that was wrapped on the bus. I think we all kind of fell in love with bus wraps from this experience, and probably look in 24 to see a program like that coming out of Artbound. Next. We continued our partnership with Fulton County Arts Commission in the Public Art Futures Lab. Arts fellow Sarah Lawrence was chosen to be MARTA's resident. And if you go to the next slide, her prompt was to create a project that utilizes Microsoft's AI technology to let our customers create an artwork together. So she made an app called the Tapestry of Travel, and I'm showing you here what it's like to kind of walk through the app. You are first to choose your language out of the 6 most commonly spoken languages in Atlanta. And then it takes you through a little explanation page, and you say, where are you going right now? And you pick from the buttons where you're headed. And if we go to the next slide, then it asks you, okay, let us know how you're feeling about this or anything about your day. And you say a few words there. And then it asks you to pick a few colors, and you can pick really as many as you want to describe how you're feeling. And so you pick a few colors. And then if you go to the next slide, it sort of thinks for a second, and then it spits out this little swatch, which is sort of like, okay, there's my swatch. But then when you view the tapestry, which is on the next slide, you see how it all comes together. And so this piece continues to grow and has been shown at the Public Art Futures Lab at the Underground there by 5 Points. And we're also talking to the artists to see if this is something we want to keep going and show on a regular basis in a digital format in our stations. Go to the next slide. This is showing you just a bit about how the word got out. So we had A-frames in 10 stations as well as in 10 of our most frequently used bus shelters. This shows you the bus signage. And the map there to the right of it is a distribution map. So this is not a heat map showing how many people used it. This is simply showing where it was used. So each flag may indicate 50 users or 1 user. However, I show this to you to show you the reach of the project. I mean, all the way up Sugarloaf Parkway, down in Morrow, Greenbrier. So really, it got around, and it's cool to be able to see that and to follow it. Next slide. We continued our partnership with Kenny Leon's True Colors Theater this year. A number of really fantastic engagements at 5 Points and West End Station. The last one was just a few weeks ago, Classical Power, and that's one of our favorites. They came out twice this year with Classical Power. That is where actors from True Colors bring original spoken word, and it's mashed up with opera singing from the Atlanta Opera. Next slide. MARTA Artbound was able to participate in Little Amal this year. For those who are not familiar, Little Amal is a project that was created in Europe by a puppet company. She's a 12-foot tall puppet. She is meant to represent a young Syrian refugee, and she's meant to raise awareness of the many millions of children who are also refugees along with their parents. Little Amal has walked from Turkey through Europe. She made her U.S. premiere last year in New York City, and then this year came to Boston and all the way down the seaboard and has gone across now the U.S. So she came to Decatur Station as well as Center for Civil and Human Rights, the Beltline, other places, but she emerged in Decatur from the MARTA station where about 200 people or more were there to see her, and then she did a loop around the square. And so a wonderful partnership there with the City of Decatur Arts Alliance, the Center for Puppetry Arts, and Flux Projects. Next slide. Our most recent partnership is with ATL DOT. We have been painting bike barricades for a protected bike lane. What you see here is the kind of the before picture. During the pandemic, the DOT put out these barricades as a sort of temporary bike lane, kind of a tactical urbanism project. And while the bike lane was embraced, it became a bit unsafe as cars kind of knocked the barricades around. And because the city had a surplus of concrete jersey barriers, the idea was hatched by Heather Lake out of Melissa's office to create this partnership and build this more protective bike lane. Let's go to the next slide. So Artbound was engaged, and this is one of our favorite things to do, support a functional project that really improves life in so many ways. And so we engaged Ashley Bella. She is an entrepreneur from College Park, born and raised in Southwest Atlanta, deep roots there, and has a company called Artsy Bella that engages corporate and other groups in art making with kind of a mental health focus. So she's great at building community, and she knows a lot of people and has a deep bench, and so we needed a lot of people. So we thought Ashley would be a great match. Here are the artists that were chosen from the selection panel. Selection panel was made up of both artists and community members from the West End neighborhood. They picked Charity Hamidullah and Leah Abakayan. Next slide. Here you can see Leah and Charity's proposals. Leah's there on the bottom with the cyclists, and so each of the barricades has a combination of 1 to 5 cyclists riding together, carrying their different belongings with them. Charity's proposal is talking about connection and uniting and bonding, very colorful, and Charity's is actually on the outside. The top image is a proposal image, but that is actually the side that is out to the street is Charity's. And so we can go to the next slide. So here's the before picture, here's the challenge. 151 pretty roughed up concrete barricades. And Ashley Bella mounted a week's worth of community building events out there. We had volunteers sign up, we had corporate volunteers. If we go to the next slide, we had people who just stopped by when they came out of the station and saw what was going on. And so everybody joined into paint. We had Walmart came out with their folks, T-Mobile came out with their folks, Livable Buckhead came out and did a team building day and painted barricades. It was just a really nice week. In the next slide. We also had a special visitor from City Hall. Mayor Dickens came out and put his mark on the barricades as well. And on the left there, just to let you know kind of how it was put together. So stencils for Leia's, all the artists, all the community volunteers painted the stencils, and with Charity's, it was more of a paint by number where she made shapes and then indicated the paint color. Next slide. And so here is just a snapshot of the finished piece. This is what's on the outside going down. The city is placing these barricades bit by bit. So about 50 are out right now, and they'll continue to place these on weekends until it's completed. Right now, we are tracking December 5th as a ribbon cutting date that will be hosted by Atlanta. Next slide. Many of you may remember the Next Movement partnership that we did last year. This was where we had 5 artists on the trains. 4 of them were performing artists and did their bit on an actual decommissioned train. And it was very similar to the Tiny Desk concerts for NPR. And so that was eventually then, those were put online and put out to the public, and then it culminated in an event at the High Museum last November, about a year ago. Highly well attended, about 400 people attended. The artists were there in person to speak and make performances. Well, in the meantime, after the success of that event, WABE picked up the Next Movement videos and created a documentary about the making of them, as well as showcasing the artists, talking about MARTA's part in it, of getting it going and funding it and supporting it. And so that documentary then was picked up again by PBS Digital Studio and PBS Streaming, PBS Passport. So it's a pretty big deal. We've gone national with it. It's really exciting. And they'll be premiering, WABE will be premiering the documentary at the Center for Civil and Human Rights next Tuesday night. Mr. Greenwood will be there on the panel to speak on MARTA's behalf, along with Egbert Perry, who is on the board of the Center for Civil and Human Rights. All the artists will be there as well. And so it's really exciting. And we'll be rebooting this lineup, this collaboration in the next year, in the coming year. So look for the new lineup to be announced early next year. Next slide. I do want to say before I go away that we have some holiday events coming up as well. You all hopefully received the holiday mailer. However, it will be caroling around the system. We'll have the Tinsel Tones carolers back in actual ugly sweaters, not cool sweaters like Jim has on today, but kind of tacky sweaters. And then for the first time this year, we have the Alliance Theater carolers from the Christmas Carol wearing their full costumes. They'll be riding the train from North Springs to Art Center one day, so anybody who has a ticket to a Christmas Carol can also ride with them if they want and get off at Art Center, see the play. We have Full Radius Dance joining us in December for the first time, not the last time. So we're super excited about that. And we're bringing back the Urban Nutcracker this year from Balethnic. This is their 30th anniversary performing this original choreography in Atlanta. So it's an exciting time for them to be back at MARTA as well. So it's been a joy to be up here today talking to you guys, but I would love to have any questions that you have this time.
Thank you, Ms. Durga. Mr. Durrett.
Thank you. What a wonderful report.
Oh, thank you.
My wife and I were down at West End Tuesday, and we parked. We had to drive because my wife can't walk very well right now. And we parked next to all of those barriers that had been painted, and we were walking through them and wondering, I wonder what this is all about. And there was nobody there to ask the question of. And when we left, we went south on Lee Street, and suddenly we saw what they were for.
Yes.
And it was just so cool. I also love the tapestry of travel. Is this something that actually changes over time as people participate?
Exactly, yes.
So it's like the lighting on the bridge up in Montreal over St. Lawrence,
Oh,
where
wow.
the lighting responds to different inputs in the environment. I think it's wonderful, and I hope we do it ad infinitum. Let's just keep doing this.
We can
stuff.
make that happen.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frierson.
Yes, every time I hear about Artbound, I get excited. Because I tell you, I follow them on Instagram, and I don't do a lot of Instagram. Only my daughter and Artbound, okay? So but I love to see what y'all doing in that space. I think it's marvelous. Because it's reaching that cultural piece of people who are creativity, and they love to express that, and it allows them to do that across this landscape. I think it's an excellent way for us to let people know that MARTA is in the community and does these things. I love it.
Thank you so much.
And I love the way y'all painted those barriers. I tell you, I think that is amazing. So great job. I just want to make a comment about it.
Thank you so much. I actually would like to hand the credit for Instagram to Tracy, Crosby, and Santana Nash, because they do a great job. Do y'all want to stand up?
Thank you.
Just
Appreciate
say
it.
hi.
There you go. Thank you. I love it. Yes.
They do a great job with it.
Thank you. Ms. Williamson.
I'm just going to ask about the next movement, the cellist that was featured.
Okori, yeah.
What is his name?
Okori Johnson, but he goes by OK Cello.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I need to get his contact information
Okay.
if possible.
Sure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Mr. Floyd.
First of all, I don't know anybody's got any more of these concrete barriers than GDOT. Have you given this information to Russell McMurray yet?
No, but if he has some extras, we really could use
I
them.
bet he's got some somewhere, I'll tell you that. But I'd love to see them. And Jim, she's just kidding about the sweater, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, we love it. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Durga or comments? Hearing none, thank you. Thank you. At this time, we'll have a briefing on media impressions. Stephanie Fisher, Senior Director of Communications. Ms. Fisher.
Hello there. Well, good afternoon, Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Kiernan, and members of the External Relations Committee. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm the Senior Director of Communications, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the media impressions for July through October. Next slide, please. Getting to and from the Peachtree Road Race was a breeze in July thanks to frequent rail service, shuttle buses, and excellent customer service. Taking MARTA to the race was the top news story of the month. In July, we were mentioned in the news 2,100 times. 96% of those mentions registered as positive or neutral in tone. And the news coverage we received had an advertising value equivalent, or AVE, of $4.5 million. Next slide. Much of our social media engagement for July was around the race as well, with posts on Twitter and Facebook doing very well. Kali received a shout out on LinkedIn from Clayton County after a visit to Forest Park to talk transit. And Instagram's top post was a great shot of a train that was taken by a freelance photographer. Now, these numbers you see are for our MARTA transit accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. These do not include our MARTA service Twitter account, which, as you know, focuses solely on service information and alerts. Impressions are views, and we had close to 324,000 of those. Engagements are likes or comments on a post, and we got 17,000 for the month, and 3,200 people clicked on a link in the post that either took them to our website or a news release. Next slide, please. Beyoncé's Renaissance Tour was the news story in August, with thousands and thousands of fans taking MARTA to 3 nights of concerts. MARTA was mentioned 1,700 times in news stories. 89% of that coverage was positive or neutral, and the news placement was the equivalent of $8 million in advertising revenue. Next slide. The Queen Bee was also responsible for many of the 670,000 views we received on our social media channels in August. Close to 43,000 people engaged with us, a lot asking how could they get their hands on our limited edition 50 Years of Hip Hop Breeze cards designed by our very talented marketing team. 6,700 social media users clicked on a link in our post to read or learn more. And one of our followers shared this great photo here on the bottom right of 3 trains on parallel tracks with just the simple title, Trains. And we reposted it on Instagram, and it was a big hit. And this is a good example of our efforts to integrate more user-generated content on our social media pages. Next slide, please. In September, we moved a step closer to sinking 2 retired rail cars into the Atlantic Ocean, where they will develop into reef habitats. The reefing project was the month's top news story, making up many of the 997 impressions. And we saw a first in September. All of the news coverage that we had registered as positive or neutral in tone. We had nothing that registered as negative. And all of that good news coverage had an advertising value equivalent of $8 million. Next slide. Loading the rail cars onto trucks and getting them over to the coast where they await deployment into the ocean was the most popular social media post on all of our channels in September. The reefing project did create a lot of engagement on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as you can see, with almost 1.5 million impressions or views. Over 60,000 engagements, that's people liking or commenting on our posts, and a little over 2,000 people clicked on a shared press release or video link. Next slide, please. October was another great month of positive MARTA news, with the East Lake Station soccer grand opening garnering the most coverage. Senator John Ossoff helped us kick things off, and his presence certainly contributed to the news interest. We were mentioned 1,150 times in news stories, and like in September, virtually all of that coverage was positive and neutral in tone. That coverage had an advertising value equivalent of close to $8 million. Next slide. And we had a lot of fun on social media in October. And while East Lake Station Soccer was featured and did get a lot of views, as did our participation in Atlanta Streets Alive, it was a couple of last-minute opportunities that really generated the most engagement. Rapper 21 Savage took MARTA to Underground Atlanta for his birthday party, and our marketing and social media folks were there to capture the fun. And I know I'm old because they started their night at 11. Like that was when we leave, is at 11. So we also took advantage of a social media meme on the day Taylor Swift released her version of her album 1989, which is her birth year. So we posted a photo of an old bus in the style of her album cover with the year 1971 and MARTA's version. Well, other transit agencies and a lot of companies followed suit, and it created a lot of great comments and engagement. Next slide. It was a very successful quarter of positive news coverage and social media engagement. We will continue to look for those viral social media moments or opportunities to increase our engagement online. I thank you for your attention today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Durrett.
2 things, thank you. First of all, I just love the creativity. Whoever came up with Festibus and Kick or Treat, fantastic. I want to let you guys in Instagram know that I just went there to follow you, pulled it up to see that my son
follows you before I did. So whatever you're doing it well.
Reaching the young people.
Do we have any other questions or comments for Ms. Fisher?
I just want to add, I'm excited about what we're doing out in that space, and I see so many things happening. I've been at several of those events, and our youth of tomorrow are engaged, and those of today. And I'm just excited to see what's happening and how that's creating an impression about MARTA, and I love it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I hate to think what would have happened if Taylor Swift had made a comment about her new beau here in Atlanta. Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Actually,
Go ahead.
silly but not, are there any more of those boombox breeze cards left?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think we have some left, don't we? Yes, all right, we'll get you some. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. At this time, we'll have a briefing. Take MARTA to the airport marketing campaign. Shanette Kanida, is that correct?
Chinette Kanita.
Kamita.
Kanita.
Thank you. Director of Marketing and Sales.
All right. Well, good morning, Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, and Ms. Kiernan, and other board members and committee members. So I'm Chinette Kanita, the Director of Marketing and Creative Services. I joined MARTA just about a year ago. And this is my first time approaching the board, so I'm a little nervous. But I'm excited to be here and here to provide you a brief overview of our marketing and communications plan for the Take the Train to the Plane campaign. So try saying that 3 times really fast, and you'll be good to go. So coming out of COVID-19 pandemic, our teams have been really developing strategies and looking for opportunities for us to rebound our ridership numbers, especially to the airport and with rail. We're well positioned to leverage our standing as having one of the easiest airports in the country to reach by public transit. So by launching this new campaign this holiday season, we're in good shape. About 2 weeks ago, when we started testing the waters with Take the Train messaging on our social channels, one of our followers commented, and you can go to the next slide. It's absolutely incredible to me that Atlanta is one of the only major cities with a direct subway line all the way into the airport. It's an absolutely massive convenience. I love it. So that's the type of sentiment that we want to duplicate and multiply throughout this campaign. Next slide. So the opportunity, so here's the opportunity. As you know, the airport closed its South Economy lot last month on October 23rd and will remain closed until 2026. That lot houses about 3,000 parking spaces, and it left a lot of travelers and workers really scrambling, looking for opportunities, finding other parking alternatives. So this, however, created an opportunity for MARTA to promote our direct rail service and long-term parking lot stations and increase ridership by positioning MARTA as a more affordable, fastest option for getting to and from the airport. And basically, this is an awareness campaign. It's an opportunity for us to create awareness for potential new riders, as well as reminders for our current riders, current customers that are planning their holiday travels. Next slide. All right, so starting this weekend, we're going to launch a 6-week multi-channel campaign that will run through the end of the year to capture our holiday travelers. According to the TSA, the busiest travel days of the year are the Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and also the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So we'll launch targeted radio spots and digital ads that will run from November 18th through December the 30th. Our social media campaign is already underway, excuse me, and we'll kick off our email marketing and Breeze Mobile 2.0 in-app campaigns next week, and we'll continue those through the end of the year as well. Next year, we'll continue to revisit the campaign with periodic pushes timed to the busy travel season, such as Memorial Day and 4th of July and Labor Day. Next slide. All right, so speaking of radio, I'll ask Kiara to play this audio spot.
Take the train to the plane. MARTA provides direct rail service into Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. MARTA has secure, inexpensive long-term parking at 6 rail stations. Park at North Springs, Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Doraville, Lindbergh, or College Park and take the red or gold line directly into the airport. Begin your trip with a safe, fast ride to the world's busiest airport. Take the train to the plane this holiday season.
Thank you. That was recorded by our Senior Director of Communications, Stephanie Fisher. So with this campaign, we'll establish a radio presence on leading stations for 26 to 64-year-olds because data shows that those folks are the likely demographics for airplane travelers through the holiday season. The audience is made up of 630 radio spots across 6 stations, 4 music formats, which is considered our high reach. Next slide. So our targeted digital display campaign will be geo-targeted, demo-targeted, and behaviorally targeted banner ad campaigns, which are expected to yield 1.5 million ad impressions. And ad impressions indicate the number of times an ad is displayed on a web page. Next slide. So we'll leverage our online platforms, social, and our MARTA website using organic and paid strategies to drive customers to take MARTA and to stay connected to both MARTA and the airport for updates, new information, and trip planning. Based on similar campaigns, we anticipate a reach of about 130,000 over the next 30 days. Next slide. Also, we currently have a Breeze Mobile audience of 127,000 with a consistent open rate of 36%, which is huge because normally an open rate is easily 10 or 15%. So our email audience is actively engaged. And lastly, you can go to the next slide. Lastly, we can connect directly with our current Breeze Mobile 2.0 travelers through the in-app banners to reinforce our key messagings and calls to action with links to the website. And just, I think this morning, we actually launched a dedicated landing page for this campaign. So when folks click on the banner ad or in the email, they'll be taken to a landing page that takes them to where are all the lots that they can go to, other trip planning resources as well. Last slide. All right, so coming in at just over 120,000, this is the first time that MARTA is really making this type of investment in advertising that's focused on increasing ridership and better customer engagement. We have only done so for the purposes of the TR4 shutdown and the Breeze Mobile launch. And so by executing a surround sound campaign such as this, we're really continuing to reinforce our key messages, and we'll be well positioned to meet the goals of the campaign, which are, again, increasing awareness, measured by impressions and audience reach, as well as increasing ridership to the airport, and also increasing the parking in our long-term parking lots. Next slide. Thank you. Any questions?
Fantastic. I just mailed a Breeze card to my son in Denver, so when he flies to Atlanta for Thanksgiving, he will use MARTA to and from the airport. We're not going to go pick him up. My only wish is that we had started this campaign to be coincident with when all the media were talking about Uber and Lyft and where parking lots were and that sort of thing, focusing entirely on the automobile without mentioning the best way to get to and from the airport. So I'm not criticizing, but let's use this as a lesson learned for proactively thinking about next things that might happen when something is being disrupted somewhere. We are aware when that disruption is going to take place, and a month ahead of time, we're ramping up a campaign to tell people there's a great alternative here. So that's it. Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Where, I'm sorry.
Mr. Floyd.
Where are we with the improvements to the airport station?
So that's happening as we speak. There are a lot of improvements that are, we've got flooring, we've got the canopy that are still, down the road in terms of the schedule. But if you were to walk through the airport station now, you'd see hoarding up, you'd see work underway, you'd see I think the operator containment pod on the platforms, work's already began there. I think the elevator is already completed, so there's a lot of work happening there.
The completion is scheduled for,
That's, Carrie Dean, is it 25, the complete finish? Okay, so the various elements are starting to come online now, but the complete will be 26, 27. I will say that the parking lot closure has caused some contemplation on our part to adjust our completion schedule, because while we may have accelerated a complete rail shutdown and busing, that's not conducive to a parking lot closure at the same time. So while we're using this campaign to push people to rail, we want to be careful about just how available we render our rail services.
thank you.
Mr. Durrett?
I hope that it's done by World Cup. So let's do what we can to put a nail in that and force our contractors to get there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say most of the functional requirements will be in time for World Cup, but there will be some aesthetics. I think the canopy may be the last thing that we're doing, and that I don't think that that'll be ready for World Cup in time. But it's interesting when Janet was talking about the connection between airport and our downtown. Not only are we one of the few transit agencies that goes right into the airport, but there's only one transit system in the country that gets you from your airport to your downtown core, from baggage claim to downtown, any faster than we do, and that's DC. They beat us by less than 2 minutes. But to think that we're in that kind of company, and then on top of that, the question about where are we with airport restoration and 5 points restoration. So both of our, on that measurement from downtown to baggage claim, we're improving 5 points, we're improving airport, and we're improving all points in between. So it's not just the amount of time it's going to take, but the quality of the service that our customers are going to see when this is finished will be breathtaking.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, excellent campaign. I use the College Park station quite a bit when I fly out. I'm always in and out of that space, and so I'm glad to see that that's all happening. What is interesting about the presentation, it seems like the overnight parking is all on the north line. It'd be nice if we have something that went east and west, where we could, people could park, 24/7 if they're going to catch the plane. And that's something that some of my community folks have mentioned, but I know that there were some challenges with some of our stations to do that. But that's something that we just need to keep in mind. But great campaign. I'm glad to see you're involved in it, and it's going to be excellent. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before? Yes, ma'am.
No new matter. I just wanted to follow up on Ms. LaRosa's presentation. I had the chance to attend the legislative session or briefing, and one of the things that was raised was making sure that the BRT community engagement around the enforcement process was extensive. And that was from a couple of legislators. So I just wanted to raise that with this full board, since they, not everyone was there. And also wanted to raise, I had questions about the financial fees for that. I don't know, we don't necessarily set that, but wondering if there's a way to get legislators to agree to have an opportunity for people to have a grace period, whether it's getting a warning first or doing some sort of class in order to not have to pay those fees for that 175, because they are more punitive than the other. Granted, they're not, they're civil and don't incur points, but if you're looking at that south side portion of the line, you have a different income bracket than on the north side. So wanting to make sure that we really consider that, and that that enforcement, and that this lane doesn't look as being disenfranchising when it's actually meant to be a service to people.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Hello. I think that's an absolute amazing point to bring up, and we have heard that from a number of stakeholders involved. And so the distracted driving fees, for us to mirror that language, it does exactly that. It's that first offense. If you choose to go in and take a class of some kind, it's forgiven for the first offense, so basically free. We do have to figure out some logistics behind how we would create a class or something to do that instruction and embed it into whatever systems or jurisdictions choose to do this. So we are working on that, and the draft language right now is still being considered before we drop it for the legislative session. So I appreciate you bringing that up, but we are definitely considering it.
Thank you. I appreciate that point as well. It's very important that we can educate our community. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, the External Relations Committee meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a great day.